Hello and welcome to all beautiful souls out there. You're listening to the Restore My Soul podcast with Princess Millens, your favorite grief coach and emotional wellness specialist. In this space, we will help those who struggle with grief and loss and have real conversations about how to overcome it in every area of life. Through our personal stories, practical information, and wisdom from Princess and her special guests. We are here to educate, inspire, and empower you with the strategies you need in your emotional healing journey. We do not offer medical advice, but we believe that we can all learn to heal by creating a mindset to grow past our pain and push toward our purpose. Our goal is to remind you that grief is a journey and you do not have to walk it alone. No matter what the pain or loss is, you can be restored and live fully in your purpose. So let's push through the pain together as we share our stories of resilience, one episode at a time.
Hey, and welcome in everybody to the Restore My Soul podcast for another episode. I am Princess Millens, your favorite grief and emotional wellness specialist. And we are here to help those who want to push past their struggle with grief and loss and have real conversations around that. And we are here to educate and inspire you, to empower you to walk and be all that God has called you to be, right? We know that we all are different in what we've been through, but I believe that we can learn to heal by creating that mindset of resilience. So we have a special guest today. Our special guest today is Leah Forney, and she is a visibility activator and media domination strategist. And she is an eight-time published author, and she is a transformative speaker and the creator of the visibility of media domination method and the creator of Elevate Your Pitch Summit. And Leah teaches Christian bosses, right? The BAWSE bosses, women who how to become industry experts and to achieve media domination. And that's what she does very, very well. She is currently working on her 9th book, y'all. The 9th book that will be releasing in 2024. And she has been featured in nearly 200 times in different media outlets and have won 5 industry awards. So welcome, Leah. I'm going to bring her up. And I'm so happy that you're here and so honored that you are here on this podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Princess. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that you're getting ready to inspire so many people with your story. And we know we're going to have a conversation about healing and thriving after trauma. But I want you to just kind of start off and share a little bit about your story and how did you know that media was going to be a big part of your life?
Yeah, so it's so funny because I didn't know, right? So I love to tell people my backstory is I'm the daughter of 2 addicts. So I was raised in Jamaica, Queens, New York. So shout out to all the New Yorkers out there. But my mom and dad both battled with addiction. My mother was a drug addict. My father was an alcoholic. Both of them were in and out of prison. I was actually what they called back in the 80s a crack baby because I was born addicted to crack cocaine. And so as a young girl, dealing with abandonment issues, dealing with feeling rejected by her parent, I took to writing as my way of escape. My grandmother and my aunt raised me. And so as a little girl, you could always see me penning something, whether it was poems, whether it was short stories. I was always walking around with a notebook and a pen. I did not know that God was going to call me to write books. For
Yeah.
me, writing was just the way to escape my reality. It was also my way of really tapping into my creativity because I would pen these stories about my parents that were so elaborate. So when people would ask me, questions about my mom and dad, I always had some elaborate story. Like my dad was a CIA agent on a top secret mission somewhere, like that
Wow.
was just, where my imagination would take me. And
Yes.
so little did I know that that same little girl, God would fast forward to 2016, he would sit here and say to me, it's time for you to write a book. And I was like, write a book about what?
Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to be writing a book about, sir? And so
Yeah.
he had revealed to me that I needed to write a story about my love-hate relationship with my mother. Because as a young girl, looking to mom to be the go-to or the standard for womanhood and not having that, I struggled. I loved her because she gave me life, and
Yeah.
she was in my mind, she was that superhero because she gave me life. But then I also had this hatred because she chose the addiction over her
Mm.
kids. I'm the oldest girl out of seven. So it was really interesting, that interesting mother-daughter relationship dynamic, and then you tack into addiction. So when God revealed to me in 2016 that he wanted me to write this book,
Yeah.
I'd be honest, for instance, I was like, I don't necessarily know if I want the world to know that part of my, my life.
Yes.
Like, so I kind of went back and forth with him about it for a little bit. But I learned that you can't box with God, right? Who was it that taught
Cannot.
me that lesson? Jacob. Like, you gotta at some point surrender. So I surrendered. I was like, okay, God, if I'm gonna write this book, then I trust that you're gonna give me the tools, you're gonna tell me what to say. And so
Absolutely.
I wrote the book, and it's called Unapologetically Me, Living, Owning, and Walking in My Truth. And
Yes.
it was so crazy because when I wrote that book, God had the provision was lined up. He had my editor in place
Yeah.
already. My editor was someone that I was going to church with at the time who was already a Christian author. And
Yeah.
so she agreed to edit my book. And she said to me, she was like, Leah, you're such a storyteller. And
Yeah.
again, I was like, who? Me? Like, I didn't think of it as that. And so I wrote the book. I released it April 1st, 2017. And I always tell people there's never a one and done with God. I was cool with just being a author.
Yeah.
He then took me on a journey to write 7 more books. And that journey of writing those books was really, what your podcast is talking about, is healing. And so he wanted me to give the world an inside look of my healing journey. And so I touched on, my relationship with my mom. I touched on, my own journey with grief and loss, and what that felt like. And
Yeah.
so the media piece came after, because once I wrote that first book, I was like, okay, God, you gave me a book, you gave me a message, I have a
Yeah.
voice,
Yes.
what am I supposed to be doing? And so he
Yeah.
just began to give me the strategy to get in front of the media. And every time I
Wow.
would pitch myself, I always landed the interview. And it wasn't until honestly years later that I even knew that was a thing. Like, visibility was a thing. I just knew I was
Yeah.
good with words and knew how
Yeah.
to land interviews. And so the media piece kind of didn't even come until years after I wrote
Yeah.
my first book.
Wow, wow, that's a powerful story. And a lot of times, I heard you say that you, the storyteller, yes, you, because if you were a little girl, right, and you were writing these elaborate stories about your parents being in the CIA and all of this kind of stuff, right? A lot of times I think God plants things in our hands early on that we will use even when
Yeah.
we get to adulthood, even when we get to doing the thing that he has called us to do, right? And so I'm hearing you talking about this great story of being able to get past the struggle of how you grew up, and the things that you lacked and the things that you were missing, and so how important is it to journal and find an
Mhm.
outlet so that healing can take place?
Yeah, it's absolutely important. But I want to say that journaling wasn't really the first go to. So I was an angry kid, contrary to what people might believe. I was an angry kid. I fought a lot. And I remember my grandmother, who was raising me, basically said that her biggest fear was that I either was going to end up in prison, like my parents, or I was going
Hmm.
to die early because I
Wow.
was such an
Mhm.
angry kid and I was always getting into fights. And so I had to find a different outlet. And it
Yeah.
just so happened that writing was that outlet for me. And
Mhm.
I don't even think that I even understood that it was journaling when I was 7, 8 years old. I just knew that I had these emotions, that they were intense, and that
Yeah.
I needed a way to get them out. And so, one of my biggest, my fondest memories is, my grandma always telling me how I used to write stories to God or write letters to God, and again, it was just, for me, it was just, how do I get these emotions out? Like, how do I express that I'm really hurt and really, angry that my parents abandoned me? How do I express that, you know, I'm overhearing grandma talking to my auntie about, mom being in the hospital again behind drug addiction? Like, how do I
Yeah.
express those things? And so I just took pen to paper. And so little did I know that journaling as a 7, 8 year old Leah would be the same thing that I do as an adult. And so I always tell people that if you're finding yourself in a position where
Yeah.
you don't know how to get it out,
Mhm.
put it on paper, right? Because sometimes we can just write some things on paper that maybe we don't even have the words to articulate out of our mouths sometimes, right? Or sometimes, it's hard to say it. So writing it helps us to release it. And so I always recommend journaling. And even if I think about, I had a career before I got into media, I had a 10-year career in mental health and got my master's degree in marriage and family therapy and was a clinician for 10 years. That was
Mhm.
always the thing that I would recommend to my clients, is that if
Yeah.
you cannot find the words to articulate it out of your mouth, put pen to paper, right? Because sometimes the pen can say what your words can't say. And so I highly, highly recommend journaling. And I tell people all the time you should be using it.
Absolutely. And I can really identify with that. That was really my go-to. And again, I was not ever a big writer. I was never a big writer or even journaler or anything like that. But I remember when my son passed away 4 years ago,
Mm,
and that was the thing that got me my first book as well. But it started as a journal. It started as me writing, and just like you say, it is a form of expression that I think a lot of people they struggle with, and they just don't know how to let it out. They don't know how to let the pain out. They don't know how to let the anger out, just like you said. And that lack of expression or a way to express themselves can be very, very limiting, I believe. And I believe that journaling is it's almost like a freedom, right? It's like
mhm.
freedom that opens up your heart and your mind and your thoughts to be able to put everything on paper and be able to begin that healing process, right? So,
Yeah.
so yes, I really do agree with that. But even on the media side, right?
Mhm.
How do you how would you say that or how important is it that people even take to media as being a form of outlet or a form of expression to share their story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to say, I want to piggyback off what you said, and then I'll and address that a question. But for me, and I think for a lot of people, writing can be therapeutic, right? And
Mhm.
that's why I always say journaling is so good. But even when you tie that into media, one of the things that media outlets love is unique stories, right? I always tell people there's nothing new under the sun, right?
Yeah.
But you can take a story that may have been heard and provide a unique angle to that story, right? So I love to give examples. So when the overturning of Roe versus Wade happened last year,
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to be featured on an online TV network, and they were looking for women to talk about, that impact and what that was going to feel like now that we had this overturning of Roe versus Wade. And I knew that I did not want to take just a everyday woman approach. So I took the approach of being a sexual assault survivor, right? Because I was sexually assaulted. And so I wanted to really talk about the impact that overturning of Roe versus Wade was going to now have on victims and survivors of sexual assault, right?
Oh,
Because
wow.
if a sexual assault victim ends up getting pregnant
Yeah.
by their perpetrator, right, and
Yeah.
they happen to live in a state where now abortions is banned, how is
Mhm.
that now that impacts them, right? Because now they have to make a decision of, do we keep this child that I now have, because of a perpetrator, or do I find another state where I can go to? And
Yeah.
that unique perspective was something that the media absolutely loved. Like that
Wow.
angle was
Yeah.
what they took and ran with it in all their advertising and everything. So when I
Yeah.
teach media, I teach it from a place of, we all have a story to tell.
We
It's
do.
literally figuring out what unique angle can I take, right?
Yeah.
That the media may not have heard before. And how do
Mhm.
I make it relevant to what they're looking for today?
Oh, wow. Wow. That is awesome. And that would be something that I really had not even thought about, how we marry our story even with current events, right? Even the things that happening that everybody knows about, and how that relates to your personal story and how you can get your story out there. There's
Yeah.
such an amazing way to do that, especially for people who may be still kind of shy, or feel like their story is not important, and they can see those things, even the things that we see on a daily basis, right? They can
Hmm.
see how they fit into society and how it's kind of unfolding, right? So
Yeah.
I just really, I want to ask you,
Hmm.
how does someone get past that, because a lot of times we struggle with confidence, right? we
Yeah.
st- we struggle with that confidence, especially if we've gone through traumatic events in our past. We struggle with that confidence to share our story, even in the media. Somebody who's not confident with sharing their story, they wouldn't even dare try to share
Yeah.
it on a media outlet, right? So how would you recommend somebody to get that confidence that it takes really to be able to share their story, no matter what the circumstances were?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I have two things that I would say. One, and I can't take credit for this because I believe it was Bishop T.D. Jakes who said it. One, do it afraid, right?
Uh,
So I think
yeah.
a lot of times we let fear cripple us, right?
Mhm.
And so we're afraid and we're like, oh no, I can't take that step. I can't do that. And literally what I had to do, because I struggled with confidence, I tell people all the time, I'm a girl from New York City. I didn't even like my voice growing up. And so I had to learn to like those attributes about myself, but I did it afraid.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, God, give me the words. Cause I don't, I don't know. I tell people all the time in every interview that I've had, before
Yeah.
I get on that interview, I pray. I seek God.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, God, you know this audience, you know what they need to hear. Give me
Yeah.
the words, like hide me and let them see you so I can say what thus save the Lord. So I would
Correct.
definitely say do it afraid. But the other thing I would say is practice. So one of the things that I did really early on, before I really started pitching myself, was that I would go live, but I would go live in a private Facebook group that was just me. Nobody was in that group. It was just a
Wow.
private Facebook group. And I learned that technique because I used to be in network marketing. And so when
Okay.
they would get us in the, have us practicing building up that confidence to go live, that was
Yeah.
the technique they taught us. So I would just create a private Facebook community and I would just practice going live and going
Wow.
live and going until I got confident enough to
Wow.
start doing it publicly. And then
Yeah.
once that happened, I just kept practicing. They used to say practice makes perfect, but I've learned over the years, and one of my clients has taught me this, that practice makes improvements, right? So the way we get better is that we keep doing it. I
Yeah.
can look back at some of my very first interviews and be like, ugh. Like, and I can cringe. But then now, to a lot of people, they like, oh, Leah, you do this like a pro. But it's
Yeah.
been practice. It's been me constantly doing it. And so I always tell people, do it afraid, but keep practicing. Because how do you strengthen any muscle if you don't keep moving it? So that's what I would say.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, you have to practice, and that is a really, really good strategy to, even in the mirror, right? I found myself practicing in the mirror, Leah, and just
Yeah.
saying those things that, or even recording myself. Sometimes I even record myself, even if I'm not in front of a mirror or, going live or anything like that. But I think the most important thing is that in order to create the impact that we want and we need, right, the thing that God is looking for in us is that we have to make sure that we just open our mouths, right? We first
Yeah.
of all got to open our mouths, because even the Bible says that if we open our mouth, that God will fill it. And so
Hmm.
all I ask God always to fill my mouth with whatever He wants me to say, and how He wants to for me to share the story. Because a lot of us, we have many different testimonies, right? Different things that has happened in our life that other people are waiting on us to say, right? They're
Yes,
waiting
ma'am.
on us to let them know that, hey, just look at us and you can do it too. You can be healed too, and you can survive too. And not only just survive, you can overcome and you can thrive in life, right? So yeah, this is such an important topic, and to kind of end up in this segment here in this episode, I want you to speak to the person
Mhm.
that was once you, the one that is still maybe trapped in the confines of what their past was, how they
Mhm.
grew up. Their
Yeah.
parents might have been drug addicts or alcoholics as well. They might have not had the support system that they needed, and they feel stuck. They feel stagnant. They feel like their voice is not important. Um,
Yeah.
give some words of encouragement for that person who is still struggling with saying their story and sharing it with the world.
Yeah, when as you were talking, the thing that kept coming to me and I hear in my spirit is you are enough. I
Oh,
think
thank
one of the things that, and I know from my experience that the enemy tried to keep me stuck in is this feeling of I caused this, I'm not good enough. If I think back to little girl Leah, that was her struggle. Her struggle was I must have done something that made my mom and dad not want to be in my life. And the truth of the matter is their demons was their demons. It had absolutely nothing to do with me. And I
Mhm.
think that if I would have had someone in my life tell me that early on, I probably
Yeah.
would not carry the weight of that into
Okay.
my adulthood. So I
Yeah.
would say to someone who feels stuck in that moment to tell that little girl or tell that little boy in you, you are enough. You are enough. You are enough with every aspect of your being, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. You are enough. And your story is enough. Not only is it enough, but it matters. The
Yes.
Bible tells us that the earth is waiting on the manifestation of God's people. And so for me, what that means is that there is someone somewhere connected to you that is waiting for you to show up, that is waiting for you to tell your story, that is waiting for you to break out of that fear and that shame and that guilt,
Yeah.
and to break free and step into who God has created you to be. Because once you do that, you then give them permission to do the same. And so that's
Absolutely.
what I would tell somebody is that don't be afraid of your story. One thing I will always tell people before you get into wanting to get in the media and all that, make sure you've made peace with your story, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to ever have an opportunity to be on a podcast like this and you all over the place, you boohoo crying, you can't get it together. But make sure that you made peace with it and stand in the victory of your story. Like, you have survived. One of my mantras every day, Princess, is I tell myself, Leah, you have survived 100% of the worst days that has ever happened to you.
Yes.
100%. So if you can survive 100% of what the worst things that's ever happened to you, then you can thrive through 100% of the best things that is gonna come to you, right? And so that's
Yeah.
what I would tell somebody is you are enough. You are
Yeah.
enough. Be who God has created you to be. Be who He's called you to be. Walk in that. Walk in your victory because you've made it through and you've not only survived, but you're now thriving.
Absolutely. That is a wonderful way to end that right there. You are enough. I am enough. So if you're listening right now, say to yourself, I am enough. I am enough. And my story is important. So thank you
Yeah.
so much, Leah, for being here. Thank you for sharing your story, that powerful testimony. Listen, healing through this the trauma of our lives is so important, because just like you said, that we have to make sure that we are telling our stories so that people, the ones that are connected to us, the one that God's calling to us, that they will
Mhm.
be empowered to be able to thrive in their life as well. So thank you so much for being here. And before we get out of here, I want you to tell everybody how to follow you, how to connect with you, and anything that you got going on right now.
Yeah, so look, you can follow me all on the social media streets as Leah M Forney. I am on every social media platform. If you are a boss, woman entrepreneur, definitely come kick it with me in my community, Pitch Like a Boss on Facebook. It is a thriving community. We have so much fun over there. So definitely come kick it with us. And then I have my upcoming 5-day challenge, Get Seen as an Expert challenge, that's happening September 18th to the 22nd. You definitely want to be a part of that challenge if you are desiring to really position yourself as an expert in your industry. And then I will definitely say, lastly but not least, definitely come to Elevate Your Pitch Virtual Summit that is happening October 20th and 21st, 2023. I'm so excited to be, God handpicked me and seven other powerhouse women who have done exactly what I do, have positioned themselves as experts, have gotten that media attention. And so I said, God, you know what? I want to do this. I want to bring this information to all the amazing boss women entrepreneurs that I am connected to so they can do the same. Because if I can do it, you can do it. So definitely, if you follow me on social media, you'll see the links to all of those things. I would love, love, love to have you at both of them.
Absolutely. Good job. Let's go. Let's go, bosses. So thank you again so much, Leah, for being here. And we're gonna look forward to connecting with you with other things that you're doing. And thank you. And I'll see you soon, hopefully, again.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you all so much for being here again with Restore My Soul podcast. Again, make sure that you to follow me on all social media at Princess Millens and my website at princessmillens.com. And remember that you are enough. We're going to leave it right there. As Leah said, that you are enough, and make sure that you understand that your story is powerful and is waiting to impact the world. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you on the next episode of Restore My Soul podcast.
Thank you for joining another episode of Restore My Soul podcast. Be sure to listen and watch each week as we continue the conversation on how to bounce back from the setback of grief and loss, and to become resilient so that you too can thrive in life. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any new episodes. And share this with as many people as possible so they can be encouraged in their emotional wellness journey. We invite you to follow Princess Millens on all social media platforms and on the website at princessmillens.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Restore My Soul podcast.